decreasing. Many reasons why. Typically, it can be attributed to modern day lifestyles, which are characterized by high levels of sedentary behavior and less play. If you look at the 1920s, 100 years ago, the kind of playgrounds that were around then, completely different to what we see nowadays. You only see that playground, I imagine, on a game. And the children of today are definitely more competent moving a character around on the screen than they are actually moving themselves, which is a sad reality, really. Now, you might ask, why should we really care about strength? If all children don't want to be athletes, then why strength? But actually, muscular strength now it's a well-established key health marker in the youth. So youth with low muscular strength, with regard to physical health here, are at a much higher risk for developing non-communicable diseases. Now, even though the symptoms to many non-communicable diseases, so cancer, heart attacks, diabetes, and the like, they typically manifest in adulthood, yet the genesis and the root of these problems occurs in childhood. So strength has now been shown to be a really strong predictor of adult health. Independent of obesity, independent of cardiovascular fitness, strength itself is massively related to future health. Secondly, strength is one of the foundations to physical activity. So in order to be physically active, there has to be a certain amount of muscular strength. So to be physically active and to move with confidence, to be competent at moving, you have to have a certain amount of muscular strength, as muscular strength is responsible for running, throwing, jumping, climbing. So without that prerequisite level of muscular strength, children will really struggle to engage in sport and activity with confidence and competence, and they won't be motivated to play sport, and what you'll see is an increase in sedentary behaviours. So pediatric exercise scientists have established that one of the three main causes of the physical inactivity pandemic we see today is a low level of muscular strength. And the third reason is mental health. Now, strength is directly related with mental well-being in the youth and in adulthood as well. Strength training itself has been shown to positively affect indicators of self-efficacy and global and physical self-worth. So you see a lot of the youth nowadays are struggling with mental health. Strength can absolutely be used as a tool to develop confidence and ultimately mental health. So that's really why we should care. And with the well-established benefits of strength and the low level of strength we see, the problem, again, we face here is that primary schools very rarely implement strength-building activities into PE. Now, there's three main reasons for this. Number one is lack of expertise. So primary schools lack expertise, primary school teachers lack the expertise to deliver structured, evidence-based and fun strength-building activities. Typically, primary school teachers delivering PE are not experts, are not specialist PE teachers, the subject teachers, and that's where it's at. Ofsted have actually reported a lack of confidence in PE teachers at delivering effective PE, never mind science-based strength training. So that's probably the main problem. The second problem is that schools actually have a lack of professional support. So as I said, strength and conditioning coaches out of university gravitate towards elite sport. That's the dream, is to work with Messi and Ronaldo. However, very rarely do we see strength and conditioning coaches in the primary school setting making an impact and what could be a huge impact, really. And then the third reason is outdated concerns and misconceptions. So there's still lingering concerns about strength building activities in the youth regarding stunting growth, and despite the abundance of evidence and position statements from governing bodies and organisations that you have to be integrating strength training to schools, the research is under zero debate, yet we still have certain misconceptions around the area, which will take some education on the topic. So that's the problem. So I've come up with a solution. I'm working with Matt Wright, who's the head of the strength and conditioning module at Teesside University, and he's a researcher who publishes quite a bit of research on integrating strength training into schools. The solution is, he's a prototype of the app. It's an online resource and an app aimed at upskilling PE teachers and supporting primary schools deliver evidence-based strength training in a fun way. So we've called it Strong Stories. Whether that name sticks or not, I'm not sure. Strong Stories. And here's the app. So the app contains continuums, themed continuums of movement challenges, which build strength progressively over time. So as you can see, we've got different levels here. So we have green, pink, blue, red, and yellow. Each continuum represents a different fundamental area for development in strength. So the green will represent upper body strength. The pink will represent bracing, so core strength, squatting, lunging, and jumping and landing. So the 5 key areas of strength development. And as the levels progress, the difficulty also progresses. And what we aim to do here is for each level have an animated character which the children recognize, and it's age related. So here you see we've got really famous book characters, which will be for Key Stage 1 children. And for instance, if we click on one of the levels, we'll have a different movement challenge. So here the children will see on the left the caterpillar, an animated character walking. So they have to replicate the caterpillar walking. As you see on the right, that's how it would look. And again, we're developing a lot of strength qualities there in that movement. Also down here we have assessment points. This is one of the main areas that we actually differentiate ourselves. Is we understand children are not miniature adults, so we don't tell the child we want you to do a squat or a lunge. We set a constraint on a movement challenge where the children just sees play and challenge, whereas what's actually being developed is structured strength training in a safe way. I'll give you another example of that. If we come here, for instance, this, instead of asking a child to simply squat, we would, in that animation, hopefully, which I don't have here, have a beanbag on the head. We want the child in a squat pattern to remain upright. We want them to have their bum to a certain depth. So instead of actually explicitly telling the child your bum has to be parallel to the ground, to your knees, your chest has to stay, your torso has to stay upright, we'll say put a beanbag on the head with a basketball going through the legs, with your bum in line with the cone. Can you circle the basketball around your legs whilst keeping the beanbag on your head? So we reinforce what we want to see through constraints as opposed to explicit, quite honestly, boring instruction. Once you do that, the children can peer assess themselves on a traffic light system. Once the children think they're ready, the teacher will allocate a star to each movement. Once you get a star on the movement, you can then move on to the next movement, and so on and so on. Here we have a dashboard for the class progress. So this is an example for one class. We have the filters for different classes. We have the children here. We see who's advancing, really doing well in the class, as opposed to who's not doing so well. This is based on the accumulation of stars. Each child then has a dashboard which you can select. So if we go on to one child's dashboard here, we can see that we have a demonstration of which level the child's on for each continuum. And we have the child's individual accumulation of stars over time for each different movement category. This can be displayed in a much more friendly way. Once it's all interactive, hopefully this will be easier to navigate. So this here, what we see is typically our subjective quantification of improvement. The teacher looking at a movement saying, yes, you've got that, and the child moves on. We can hopefully infer that the child is getting stronger. But we actually also have some objective measures here, which are in the app. So inbuilt equations in the app where the teacher twice yearly will administer a very, very basic and practical test, one being the hand grip test, another one being a motor control test here. And it will categorize the children based on normative values within the research, and it will potentially identify gifted and talented children, and it will also identify at-risk children. So the research has established certain thresholds for children who are at risk for developing disease based on strength level. So our app offers a really novel a novel way to identify and subsequently treat these at-risk children. And that's what I've put together for a prototype for the app. Hopefully, for the Key Stage 2, of course, it will be a different theme to engage the kids. It will be more age-related. So I'll go on to give you one example of how we separate ourselves from the competition. The competition is basically one company. There's one company out there now who deliver. They have 89 to 90,000 children using their app on a subscription basis. It's employed across England and Europe, and they're the only company currently out there integrating strength training into PE through an online resource. I'll give an example here of the methods they use. Let me go back here. The method they use, this is a video from their demonstrations on their movements. Again, the concept is excellent. We want the child, for instance, here it's a lunge. The way they demonstrate that is by telling the child to turn the right foot more than 90 degrees. And it's a human, a strange guy demonstrating a lunge. There's no real challenge there except completing the actual lunge. As opposed to what our app provides, it's an environment which is a game. So now this child, we're reinforcing through constraints a lateral lunge. He has to keep the balloon up, which keeps his torso upright. He has to move the ball from the low cone to the other side, which gets the depth we want, and he has to keep that right foot in the middle of the circle. Now that there it's a much better way to engage children through external cueing and constraints-based learning. The research massively backs that up, and that's one of the main differences between our idea and the one that's currently out there. Also, that demonstration on the app will hopefully be an animated character doing that movement. You can imagine it's much more engaging than that strange man doing the movement. Okay, so again, another way we separate ourselves from the competition is as mentioned, we give options for actual objective quantification of improvement. So the teachers can say, look, here's the data, the strength is getting better on the hand grip and the movement score is better on this validated test, as opposed to, well, we allocated stars here and there, so we think they're getting better. So that takes us on to the next section.